And
There we go. Can you hear me?
okay, yeah. All right.
We did it.
I got sound. We've got it figured out.
Amazing. How are you, sir?
You know what? I can't complain. Nothing but sun shining on me on this beautiful day in Kansas City. I hope you're doing all right.
I'm doing okay. I gotta say, I'm a little I don't know if annoyed is the right word, but you're the second mayor now that I've talked to and interviewed that is actually younger than me. And I'm not a particularly old man. It makes me feel very unaccomplished to talk to somebody that is in my age
uh,
range but has accomplished more.
man, I have so many young haters though that I feel like I'm just the old institutional guy now. So,
Well, let's dive in. I really appreciate you. This is, I think it's certainly my first Substack Live, so excited to be here and excited to test out this new medium for talking to people. Um, so, could you just talk me through, like, what is your background? How did you to get to be in this position?
I mean, it's been a blessing. So I've been mayor of Kansas City since 2019. I am born and raised in Kansas City, Missouri. Went away for school, but otherwise have been here my entire life. And I think the way I get here is actually the way I came up. I grew up with a hardworking woman. I was the youngest of three children. We knew homelessness a bit as a kid. I knew some other challenges, but on the whole, I always saw how government, particularly local government, could make a positive difference long term. And so that has inspired me throughout. Became an attorney. When I came back home, I think I saw a few issues that have been around for my entire life. So that inspired me for city council. I was lucky enough to get elected. Then the mayoral seat was open, 12-person primary, which means that all you need is like your mama and 500 people to vote for you. I was able to, to, jump over that hurdle and have been mayor ever since. The issues though, I mean, so I became a mayor during the first Trump administration. Some issues are the same, some have changed mightily. I think that, back in 2019, we were talking a lot of how do we ever get infrastructure funded? We were able to get that part changed. We were talking, I mean, just unimaginable street level violence in a lot of our communities. I remember I spoke to the mayor of Baltimore before Brandon Scott. At one point, we had a call because both of our cities were reeling from murder crises. And that's what you were seeing in a lot of places with Mayor Lightfoot in Chicago, with lots of other folks that I worked with then. So a lot has changed, but a lot stays the same. I think one of the best things that's changed is our commitment to having good solutions to the problems that confront the American city.
So, talk me through that. What has been sort of your approach? Just sort of doing my background research, I saw from the start of your campaign and from the start of your administration, um, gun violence reduction has been sort of at the forefront. So, what has been your approach, and what have you sort of found that's been successful, and what have you found that maybe hasn't been as successful?
I think step one, what you need to do is you need to make sure that you believe that things can change for the better. I think the biggest mistake that we make is something that I heard when I was running for mayor, actually. I have this wonderful councilwoman who was from kind of a suburban ish area of the city. Imagine somebody who's from Staten Island. I'd gotten her to endorse me. Things were great. She said, she's an old smoker. And she said, Q, you got to stop talking about the murders. I was like, huh? And she said, look, they'll never change, right? Like everybody's tried. It's just the way it's going to be. You got to be about everything else in the city. And I told myself, like, well, thank you, ma'am, but that ain't going to be how I live. This is the crisis, not just in the American city. I think it's fair to say it's a crisis, an epidemic in the Black community. And so I think the first thing you do is try to commit to saying, I'm going to talk about it. I may not solve it, but I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to respect these people's lives. I'm going to make sure that people know we can do something different. So that was that first step. The next step was, I'll be quite honest with you, a lot of battling with institutions at the time. We had a police chief when I first became mayor who I don't think had this sort of transformational view on how we can reduce homicides and shootings. He came from an old school that, by the way, in 2020 was still very active in the fight, which was saying, no, the problem isn't that we don't invest in young people, that we aren't actually trying to treat symptoms. It's a problem that we ain't put enough people in jail. We have not said that these guys are bad guys, right? We haven't, yelled about it in the right way. So there was a lot of change in the mentality. And it took years, by the way, years. And so we've changed leadership at the police department. We have a new prosecutor now who I think subscribes to my view of how you do focused deterrence. She came out of my office, proud of that. And I think that, we keep chipping away, recognizing that the misfortune and the greatest challenge to the American city, and I'm watching the mayor's race in LA right now and everything else, whether it's violent crime or homelessness or other certain issues, you're dealing with an individual person. Human beings aren't widgets. And so you can't just be like, all right, we got 2,000 people on the streets. Let's just build this thing. They're all going to go there. They're going to operate nationally. Naturally, it's going to be great. Same thing with violent crime. You can't just open a gym, throw in 10 basketballs, and be like, hey, y'all, it's open till 2 a.m. Good luck. You need to continue to adapt, fail, deal with a tough narrative sometimes because people expect you to fix it from day one. But I think Kansas City was ready to commit. And I think that's where we're seeing progress now.
And sort of what do you ascribe that progress to, sort of in light of your successes? I'm just looking at the numbers. You're down, um, obviously 48 murders is 48 too many, but it's down substantially in 2023. You had 74 at this point,
Yeah.
66 in 2022. What do you ascribe that success to right now, especially in light of sort of that thought that it is happening everywhere, but it's happening bigger some places than others?
Yeah. I mean, I think that the first thing I will say, and I mentioned focused deterrence before, for those who may have stumbled upon this Substack and don't give a hoot about like what that is or what it means, it's very much this. In any American city, you have a small number of people who are engaged in lots of the violent crime and also disproportionately become the victims. To the extent that your community focuses on those folks. And so we have a group by the name of Stand Against Violence KC, Save KC. We visit with this group of people. We tell them, look, here are exceptional life opportunities we're going to provide for you: job training, housing, counseling, right? All these sorts of things you may need, help reunifying yourself with your children if you follow the straight, narrow path. If you do not, however, we are going to come down on you on prosecution. The police are watching you. Don't force us to do that approach. And we see that program paying incredible dividends, particularly in wards, patrol divisions of the city where violence is the most pronounced. I think that has been a transformational difference maker in terms of what we are trying to do. The other things that we are doing are specialty courts in our municipal court system. And why municipal court? Obviously, your homicides aren't being prosecuted there, but that's usually the gateway into more serious level offenses. And we recognize that from having a gun court, for example, if you are actually somebody, which takes some work, by the way, in a jurisdiction with a lot of crimes, if you're somebody whose gunplay gets to the level of having the attention of the police, but you didn't get shot or you didn't shoot somebody, this is a great moment for us to warn you to stop. Put it down. Don't take it to the same places. Get out of that truck. That's one specialty court. A domestic violence court does, I think, frankly, similar work as well. So that is, I think, how we've gotten started, and I think it's how we're seeing progress.
And a lot of cities, especially medium and big size cities, are dealing with the issue of fewer police officers to do sort of the enforcement side of all of this work. How have you adapted to having a smaller police force post COVID?
Yeah. I mean, look, here's the reality, which is the reality, which is the reality. I hope my staff cuts this line later. 1987 is not coming back. This has nothing to do with defund, refund, massively fund, or anything like that. The way we deliver core basic services, including American policing, will not be the same. I was in Baltimore. They were talking about how they used to have, gosh, right, 3,500 or something officers. In Kansas City, we used to have a lot more too. What did we not have, by the way? We didn't have cameras that were deployable. We didn't actually have the ability to break down cell phones and get lots of investigative information. We didn't have people who were threatening to kill each other on TikTok, on Snap, like we do now. Things have changed fundamentally, but too many of our discussions on how law enforcement works is still based on a model that frankly was created by Daryl Gates at the LAPD, right? Have a ton of officers in places, build some SWAT teams, have that rapid response, frankly, kind of treat your city like you're an army. And that's the way it's going to work. It does not work. It is not working in any American city. And I will even go with suburban communities that contend it does. Their numbers may be there where they think they are approaching that same level, but law enforcement today, just like it was before, I'll say, but just in a different way. It is based on trust. It is based on some belief that there are consequences. And it is based on the fact that we need to continue to have a community that buys into what's happening. What my city, what other American cities, and I will give shout outs to ones that don't get attention. St. Louis is one example that have seen dramatic reductions in homicides from, frankly, historic highs of just a few years ago to, frankly, rather historic drops at 40, 50-year levels. The way they're doing that is community trust, technology, engagement, focused deterrence, and making sure that you are investing in other alternative responders.
I want to harp on that because it's an issue I deal with in New Orleans whenever I'm frequently asked, how many officers should we had? We had 1,600 in 2006, immediately after Katrina. We have 900 now. Um, and it's like, what is our number of ideal officers? And the answer is you have what you have, and you sort of need to deal with that. How do you have this conversation where you have a sort of adult professional conversation about crime and crime reduction that doesn't get into sort of the activist political, defund,
Mm.
refund? This is a logistical strategic enforcement discussion, if that makes any sense. Like how
Yeah,
how,
absolutely.
how do you communicate this to a wider audience?
It is very hard, first of all, and I will, say that. I don't know what is in my life after being mayor, but if I could just get paid to be like the Music Man, but going and be like, crime. Actually, it takes really creative strategies, right? I mean, it's just like everybody on every end. It is not just
Cut
shouting,
that commercial right there.
right? Like, yeah, no, it's like everything else. I mean, isn't it astonishing to me that nobody is saying we should treat cancer the same way we did 35 years ago? Nobody goes in and says, "Oh, well, I think you just gotta go ahead and do this," right? Or that Nurse Hatchet is going to saw off a leg that nowadays we found new treatment for. But it seems like in law enforcement, we still do that. Some of that is the advocacy that exists within it. But I think another big part is, we need to be there are two things that I think are really problematic in government. The first, and I'm guilty of this as much as anybody, there's this desire in government at the local, state, and federal level when you don't know how to solve something to just say, I put a lot of money into something. If you blindsided me with a question, which is a fair one, just said, Quentin Lucas, preschoolers don't read at the level they need to in Kansas City. What are you going to do? I said, well, in next year's budget, we're going to commit $40 million, a 50% increase to ensuring that preschoolers can read. And everybody will applaud, be like, damn right. Yeah. And then after that, no one will know what happened. So in public safety, what we have done for vastly too long of all political stripes is to say that we will make sure that this year's police budget is increased, and that will make the difference. And by the way, lest you think I'm letting my defund friends off, right? They were doing in some ways the opposite and saying, right, by cutting budgets, spending them somewhere else, we don't know what the hell it's going to be, but, spend it somewhere else, then we will solve the things. Funding and budgets alone are not the solution. You need to talk about the strategies. You need to talk about the tactics. For those of us who are parents, right, what we don't just say is, well, honey, the way I think we're going to raise these kids is I'm going to make them above average income for the next 18 years, and I assume it's going to be okay, right? No, you actually like, maybe we should live in this neighborhood. Maybe we should do that. We should put them in this sport. That's the first thing that we need to fix in government. Thing number two, we can't be afraid of failure. And frankly, every politician, we spend all this time in our career basically having political capital to spend. And look, I'm guilty of this too. And what do we usually blow it? We usually blow our political capital on, all right, I really want to make sure the Saints stay in New Orleans. So even though the city's broke as hell, we're going to make sure that we fix the dome or the Smoothie King Arena for the Pelicans. And that's what we're going to do. Not in that battle, but what we need to actually do is say more often, spend that capital on saying, I know y'all, I know it is violent right now, but we also have the stories of the people that we've helped. And in year one, you are not going to hit the homicide numbers you want. My dream, if you're asking me for real, and when I ran for office, I said I'd like to get homicides in Kansas City down below 100. It is almost halfway through the year. We are actually below 50. Who knows what happens? But we are finally getting closer. This is my seventh year as mayor. What I will take from that, though, right? Now, and I had editorials and they wrote, like, he didn't meet this promise, all that sort of stuff. I'm still around. I was still reelected. And I want to say part of that is not that Kansas City stopped caring about crime, but they said, we think he's actually trying to do something and something that will last. The way you treat these things is not a one-off campaign. It is not just bringing, federal agents, 200 federal agents in and saying we're going to arrest everybody once and that's going to make a difference. That, by the way, the year we did that was the most violent year in the history of Kansas City, right? We're going to actually do more that's sustainable.
And how, I I would love if you got to, 0 murders, that would be fantastic. At some point, nationally, we're seeing this decline. At some point, it's gonna stop
Yeah.
declining. How do we have that conversation when, "Hey, okay, we've, reduced murder a lot. There's still hard choices to make. There's the strategies that we've done work." How do you then not just fall back on sort of that tough on crime? We're gonna, more jail, more police, more
Yeah.
toughness is the answer, that we know that there's a smarter answer. How do you communicate that?
I heard this line. Actually, I think it comes from Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, RIP. And it was, you don't throw away your umbrella when it's raining, right? And I think what we need to make sure we continue to do is to first be innovative. So the really the big thing you have to decide, I'll go back to my raising children analogy. From age 3 to 5, I don't know, my son loved me and I could hold him and keep him from running away. Now he's faster and bigger, so I gotta parent in a slightly different way. I think in terms of public safety, we need to recognize trends change. If you were following violence, several decades ago, graffiti, it's the most interesting thing about it, right, was often people making threats to each other, right? They're not quite doing that the same now. It is on social media, it's morphed. So what does that mean? It means law enforcement attention may need to be in something different. And frankly, to save yourself some police budget, maybe you get some analysts who actually understand the social media discussion and all of that. And so you're actually having a non deputized or sworn person who doesn't need the gun, the pension, and all the same stuff that's helping you actually address crime strategy issues. I mean, I think it is agreeing to be innovative. It is not being too possessive of just one plan. And it is understanding that this is a continuous battle for American cities. You know, I'll use another analogy. I don't know. I'm in a good mood. It's a Friday. For anyone, which is I think most people, right? Whoever think about their weight, right? Like you can't stop like eating right or working out or whatever, right? You have to just keep doing it. Oddly enough, forever, right? There's never this moment where you're like, I'm perfect. I'm a be perfect. Bring me the bucket of whatever my favorite food is, and I am going on a walk ever again. Instead, you keep doing. And so I think what mayors, what American cities need to make sure they do is to say, how are we innovating? How are we continuing to commit to programmatic efforts? And I would implore people, implore them, get away from the budget. And that does not mean don't hurt your people. Don't undervalue people who have committed themselves to your city and safety. But what we need to do in more situations is ask police chiefs, all right, what were your crime strategies? How do you think they worked? And how do you think we can do better next year? And that's how we go from just saying, all right, we finally hit 100 homicides. To after that being like, we hit 70, we hit 50. I mean, my favorite, there are like a few American city stories. I find the Boston transformation over the last 40 years just exceptional. But a mayor I've read about, because I'm into black mayors, as you might expect. When David Dinkins was mayor of New York City, they averaged what, about 2,200 murders at their high point. 2,200. New York City is less than a quarter of that these days. I mean, it's astonishing. When I was in law school, I taught in a prison in upstate New York with a lot of men who actually were from down in the city. And they would talk about all these things. I'd be like, brother, man, things have changed. In the same way that things can change there, it can change in your city, but you have to stay active on it. I think Mayor Dinkins would have loved to get below 1,000 in his time. Now, when you get above 500, people are kind of saying, oh my gosh, right? Things are out of whack.
We're done 90%, so from 711, I think, through April to 72 or 74 this year. It's
Yeah,
remarkable.
it's wild.
So, if you are approached by another mayor,
Yeah.
or I don't know if you have any examples of when this has happened, asking for just advice, what are the first things that you tell them? And do you have sort of a spiel that you would give them of these are the things that I think you should do?
Yeah. So first thing, stay strong, sister. Stay strong, brother. The way that crime usually most directly impacts a mayor's office, right? Some of us hire our chiefs directly. Others of us have more interesting controls and they're civil servants. So it's not like they're as easy to fire as you would think. But once you get past all the bureaucratic and administrative stuff, the way you will usually get hit on violence issues as a mayor is either there is an absolutely horrific homicide that breaks your heart too, or you have some children, teenagers that are wilding out and they're like, wow, this city is a madhouse. What have you done or why haven't you done enough? You come up with answers in the moment, but you don't come up with radical responses too quickly. Don't just be like, all right, I'm now deploying, the National Guard to every bus stop in my city. The other thing that I think you do is say, I have a plan and I'm going to stick with it. And that is hard. And sometimes you need to adjust, but don't let the adjustment be based on one incident. Don't let the adjustment be on your haters and your skeptics. You need to actually go with the plan itself. Next thing you need to do, absolutely talk to people. Call other mayors. They're much easier to access than you would ever think. When I first became mayor, we needed to talk to the mayor of Chicago. At that point, I did not have a relationship with her of the time. And I just had my staff call the main office and we got through in just a few minutes. It could have been a prankster, but whatever, it worked. See what's working. In fairness, see what's not working. And what I would encourage to any mayor or elected or person is, when you hear struggles, don't be scared. I mean, this is just my personality. I love talking to people who have persevered and who have persevered through struggling moments. That's why St. Louis, Baltimore are interesting test cases to me, right? Boston, cool. I love Mayor Wu. Consider her a friend, right? We've had good things. But she's coming from a different space from the time she became mayor than, say, Brandon Scott was. And so, I mean, I think that's why you make sure you talk to people who've been in that struggle and it can work well for you.
So, last two questions. I want to get away from crime specifically. I did want to ask, you've got the World Cup coming up. Was just wondering, how have you and your office and your city prepared for all of that? And is there a matchup or a team that you're cheering for specifically, or can you just you're not allowed to take sides?
Well, I mean, look, let me tell you something about your last question. I had some journalists from England here. They will be practicing in Kansas City. And I happen to have a Lionel Messi jersey in my office. And I promise you that got into the newspaper in London, right? And people were like, well,
International incident.
this biased guy is against England. So no favorites. I'm here for everybody who comes from Curacao, who's playing here, to Argentina, who's playing here. Obviously, I want the most eyeballs possible on Kansas City. And so, we'll just see how that all works, but you can probably suspect who I may want to see go forward. In terms of preparation, I feel great. I feel great about the network that we built out. Law enforcement, we've seen great collaboration across two different states, Missouri and Kansas, a number of suburban jurisdictions, and obviously the city. We've built out a transportation network that, frankly, we need all the time here. Free buses that get you from the airport to the downtown area of the city, reduced cost buses that are getting you out to the stadium. We are ready. We are excited, and I'm going to get really, really into soccer this summer, even though I do need to see who ends up winning the NBA finals before that.
There you go. And then last question is even more out of left field. Um, and I think I posted this on LinkedIn, and one of my followers mentioned that we have a shared affinity for the Bravo show Summer House. And so I was just going to ask, what are your takeaways from the first part of the reunion?
Oh my God. I think I did not expect that.
I told you it was left field.
I'm going to stick with KJ and just kind of talk about how you're learning about a human being, the interactions, I think maturity that we're getting kind of out of it. And I think we're seeing more examples that I hope more men, particularly young men, can take on in our country. I think it's a good message for our community more broadly.
That's great. All right. Part two airing next week for those of you that are interested.
Stay tuned. They
All right.
call it the Bravo sphere, right? But yeah,
Yes.
You know,
We'll have you back. We'll talk Summer House. We'll talk Vanderpump. We'll talk Southern Charm. All of them.
I have to say, I'm very grateful to my wonderful wife who has helped me get into more of this stuff. And she can really go to town on it, but I'll make sure I get some of the other shows in my repertoire before we
All
talk.
right, we're gonna launch a podcast that's weekly. You and I just reviewing Bravo shows.
That's outstanding.
Mayor Luke, thank you so much for joining us. This has been so wonderful, and I really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks so much. Have a great day.
Take care.